Hey everybody, it's me. I hope you're all having a great day today. I just wanted to go over something really quickly with you, okay? I often get the question about what the difference is between saying at this hour and at this time. At this hour, at this time. Or sometimes it's at that hour and at that time. So imagine you want to say something like this, for example. 야, 너 이 시간에 뭐 해? 너 이 시간에 여기서 뭐 하는 거야? 야, 너 이 시간에 여기서 뭐 하냐? Okay? So imagine this is something you want to say. And for most Koreans, I imagine, when they think of the expression 이 시간에, the first expression that usually pops in their head immediately is at this time. Because it makes sense, right? At 이 시간에, 시간 is time, and 이 시간에, it must be at this time, right? However, if it were me, and if it were me that wanted to say, 야, 너 이 시간에 여기서 뭐 하냐? I would almost never say, hey, what are you doing here at this time? I would almost never say this. I would say, what are you doing here at this hour? And I just wanted to make this short video to explain to you. I don't know if I can do a very good job, but let me just try my best to explain this to you, okay? The reason I would say at this hour and not at this time is because we're talking about the time of day, the time during the day, the time on the clock, okay? Whereas at this time is often used not to refer to the time of day, but the timing or the period, okay? So, to use a little Korean to explain this, at this time, this expression is often used to say 이번에는 or 이 시점에서, or 이 시기에. Okay? At this time is used in this way a lot. However, when we want to ask someone, 야, 너 이 시간에 여기서 뭐 해? We're usually referring to the time of day, right? We're talking about the hour, 시간대, right? We're not talking about timing. We're not talking about the period or the time of the year or the time of the month, right? It's the time of day. And because of that, a lot of native speakers will say at this hour instead of at this time. Similarly, imagine you want to say something like this. You want to say something like 그 시간에는 문 연대 찾기 어려울걸? Wait, did I say that right? 그 시간에는 문을 연 데를 찾기가 어려울걸? 그 시간에는. So again, we are referring to the time of day. So for native speakers, it's just usually more natural to say at 그 시간에, at that hour. It's going to be hard to find a place that's open at that hour. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy to find a place that's open at that hour. Think about this expression, at the time. At the time, I was a student. At the time, I was young and stupid. At the time. Is that talking about the time of day? No, it's talking about a period in which I was a child, a young kid, a stupid student. At the time, nobody knew what was going on. At the time, nobody had any clue. At the time, I couldn't even imagine it would turn into a global pandemic. At the time. So even when they say things like at the time, it's not referring to a time of day, but a period. For that same reason, they call it business hours. 영업시간. They don't say business time. They say business hours, right? I mean, you're used to that, right? You're familiar with that. You walk up to a store, of course, if they have it written in English on the window or something or on the door, they would say business hours. And also think about the expression by the time something happens, by the time the next president is elected, or by the time by the time my kid grows up, by the time she turns 18. See, when we say by the time, we're also not referring to the time of day, but to a period. And another way we indicate the time of day is using the word then. Then. For example, let's say we met and I asked you, hey, did you get my message? Did you get my message? And you say, no, what message? And I say, hey, I sent you a message. You didn't see it? And you say, when did you send me a message? And I say, well, I sent it to you like around 11:30 last night. And then you can say, oh, I think I was asleep then. I think I was asleep then. You see, in that kind of context, I wouldn't say at that hour because we're not talking about a range of time, but rather a specific time. 11:30 it was specifically mentioned, right? In that kind of context, I think at that time is okay, saying at that time. I was asleep at that time. Yeah, actually that sounds okay. But I would probably say most of the time I was asleep then. I think I was asleep then. I think I was already asleep then. Yeah. So that's just another way we talk about time. What else? For example, if you sent me a message like 1 in the morning, and I might respond by saying, hey, what are you doing up at this hour? What are you doing up at this hour? And by saying that, I'm not referring to a specific time, but I'm referring to that time zone during the day. Like past midnight, that time zone, okay? And so I guess I could, in that case, in that scenario, I could say, what are you doing up at this time? But again, I'm not referring to a specific time, but at that time zone. So I would probably almost always say, hey, what are you doing up at this hour? What are you doing still up at this hour? What are you still doing up at this hour? That's probably what I would say. So anyway, the difference between saying at this hour, at this time, at that hour, at that time, it's not a question of how do I need to understand this, because it's not a matter of how well or how accurately you understand these rules. It's a matter of adaptation, just getting used to it. What I'm trying to say is this is not something that you can understand and immediately just start using correctly. It doesn't work that way. Language doesn't work that way because it's not math. You have to get used to it. It has to become familiar to you in order for you to use it correctly. And the only way you're going to do that, as I always say, the only way you're going to do that is to just repeat it so much that it just becomes very comfortable to you. Okay. Anyway, so that's really all I wanted to talk about in this video. I get this question all the time. And I just hope this video reaches as many people as possible so it can help you kind of get an idea of how these are different. And I hope that for some of you who are actually watching this, this becomes the moment where you can actually start using them correctly. Now remember, you will make mistakes along the way. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't worry about that. Okay, don't kick yourself for making mistakes because you learn as you make mistakes. All right. So, but we got to start somewhere, right? Okay. So have a great rest of your day, and I really hope to see you very soon in a future live stream or in a future lesson video like this one, maybe.